there's a dollar to be made off of someone else's misery, these dealers are going to figure out how to do it.
It's not like you can just poop used cars.
Car prices at auctions, at least around my area, they're about to pop, I think. All right, so Ray, we have another strike on our hands. It's not in the automotive industry, but it is going to affect the automotive industry. We have port workers that are on strike. Happened this morning, and it's from Texas to Maine. It's not just the East Coast. We have it all over on this side of the country. And Automotive News is saying that it's threatening light vehicle shipments. I've heard that we're going to have problems with parts getting to a lot of these suppliers. And I've also heard that if it lasts more than 4 weeks, I don't anticipate that happening, but it's absolutely going to send us into a full-fledged recession. What do you think this is really going to do? We're talking about the car market. What do you think this is going to, what effect's going to have on the car market?
Well, for instance, the Port of Baltimore is part of this strike. And the Port of Baltimore, I believe, is the largest port in the country for bringing automobiles in. If not the largest, the second largest. And so this can impact import brands such as Mini, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, VW, Jaguar. The list goes on and on and on. And if the strike were to continue, and let's realize that when vehicles are shipped into Baltimore, they come off the ship, they go through the vehicle port facilities there, and are typically released to the dealers 3 to 4 days after they've arrived. So there's not a lot of vehicles that are sitting there waiting to be distributed at any particular point in time. The ship offloads the 3,000 or however many it is, and in 5 to 6 days they're all gone again. They're just waiting on another boatload. So if this were to last 3 to 4 weeks, there's 3 to 4 weeks of vehicles that are not going to make it to the Port of Baltimore, which means they're not going to be released to the dealers, which means, well, the customer who ordered a particular car isn't going to get the car they ordered. It could just decimate the automobile industry.
So with some of this production being lost, some of these deliveries being lost, do you foresee that there's going to be some upward pressure on prices? Now, there won't be any upward pressure coming from manufacturers as far as MSRPs or whatever, but these dealers that were negotiable. Now, I mean, we still have this in the back of our mind, these dealers. I know I do. I'm a used car dealer, and I know in the back of my mind, I remember not being able to find cars, not being able to get cars. And I'm sure these new franchise dealers still have nightmares about that pain right when the craziness started or whatever. And I mean, that's something that we fear for, because it can really damage our business. So do you feel like these dealers that have gone through this, and now if they get some of these deliveries that start cut, or even just the threat of it, is it going to make them less negotiable because they're worried about replacing that vehicle that they are going to sell and take 10% off MSRP, but they're worried, okay, we're not going to have another one coming in its place. So maybe we don't come off this one, or maybe we don't kick our add-on off of this one for this consumer, just because I'm worried about that next car coming in to fill its place.
Replacement availability has everything to do with current pricing. If you have 10 of something and there's 10 more that were scheduled to come in over the next 30 days, but now you're not going to see them, well, the 10 that you have on hand suddenly become more valuable because you don't see a replacement for those anytime down the road. So it was no different than during COVID times, where there was just a shortage of cars, a normal number of people still in the market, and those people were willing to pay premiums to get their hands on cars. So yes, the possibility exists that we could see that again, because some dealers will feel threatened that they won't be able to replace what they're selling, and suddenly they'll find themselves out of inventory altogether. But in some cases, Brandon, this could actually be a godsend for some of the dealers. Today, Zach and I spoke about some of the brands that are having a really tough time moving units. Um, BMW, I think they had 5 of the top 10 cars that are selling the slowest. So BMW dealers would probably be thrilled to know that some of the incoming inventory that was scheduled to come in might not come in because the inventory of those vehicles is already bloated, and this would give them an opportunity to sell some of that down. Now, conversely, the fast moving cars that they might have had, they won't see the replacements for those, and so for that side of the business, it could be disastrous. For the other side of the business, it could allow them to get their inventory levels back to normal as opposed to where they're sitting at the moment.
Yeah. So the other flip side to this inflation that it could create is that, okay, just regular goods are going to be more expensive, at least for a little while, if they don't get this situation handled. And we already have buying pressure that's getting really crushed for new car dealers. And I mean, you guys have talked about, okay, living expenses have just gone up. So this $750 a month payment that people have to sign up for right now to buy a brand new car, well, they're going to be less likely, especially if they're worried, because perception is everything, right? So it doesn't matter if the reality is, okay, this thing's going to be done in 2 weeks, it's going to be done in 3 weeks, whatever, and everything will be fine after that. If people are worried about the cost of goods, especially like perishable items, you think grocery items that are going to go up very quickly and by a lot, if they think that they're about to face that, then that perception is going to have them hold on to their money, and they're going to be less likely to get into that brand new car because they can't handle it right now.
The whole concept behind this is that, yes, this, if this were to extend for a long period of time, and they're saying the cost of the strike could be upwards of, I think, $5 billion a day
Yep.
to the economy. Um, 5 billion times 30, that's 150. That's a lot of billions. So if it were to go for an extended period of time, could it tank the economy? Absolutely, it could. Could the White House step in and declare like a national emergency when it comes to something along these lines and require them to go back to work while negotiations continue? Yes, and I would think that would happen long before the economy gets tanked. I mean, I've already seen pictures on the internet of grocery stores being short of bananas. Okay, so I'm a big banana guy. And my fear is that tomorrow I can go and there won't be a whole lot of bananas for me to buy. But bananas are not the type of thing where you go, well, I normally buy 5, but I'm going to buy 10 because there could be a banana shortage. Yeah, well, what won't be short is if 5 days from now, I'll have 5 black bananas because they've spoiled, waiting for somebody to eat them. So there are certain things that could happen where people will foresee this a shortage and stock up on things they probably really shouldn't stock up on.
So this the leader of this union, what did he say? What did he say earlier?
He said, "I will cripple you." That's what he said.
Yeah, yeah. So he's talking a big game. I mean, it just brings back the flashbacks of Sean Payne and what they were trying to do. They're playing hardball or whatever. Now, so it seems like maybe it's not because maybe I just haven't been paying attention, but now I have been, since I'm starting to try to study the economy, study the car market, see where things are going. But it feels like we've had an awful lot of at least strikes or strike threats or union problems, not just in the car market, but we've had the strikes in the car market. We had UPS. We've had now we have these port workers. It feels like a lot in the last couple years. You have more years than I do paying attention to this stuff. Is it more than usual, or does it seem about the same to you?
It doesn't seem any more than usual. It seems to be blown more out of proportion than in the past because Well, there's social media, and so there's more ways to communicate what's going on, and so the listen, my son, as you know, specializes in hyperbole, and social media has brought that on, and so the thought of all these hyperbolic comments is merely, I think, because of social media. The advent of strikes, I don't think, is any greater today than it had been in the past. I think some of the hardline stances are more for show than anything. I read somewhere that the average income of one of these port workers, including benefits, is $150,000 a year, and that the union turned down the last offer from the ports, which was a wage increase of 50%. Now, I said this to Zach.
I'm in the wrong line of work.
Well, I'm 73 years old. I worked in retail automotive for 43 years. And I know there's a lot of commenters who said, well, Ray was never successful. Well, to a certain degree, I guess I wasn't, because in that time, I have never in my lifetime earned $225,000 between salary and benefits. Okay. And I can't imagine the head of my union saying, no, that's not good enough for the rank and file. I mean, who between you and me and maybe your wife, who in their right mind's turning down $225,000 in earnings and benefits? I mean, how do you turn that down?
I mean, I could understand it if they were making just 10% less than that right now, but to go from $150,000 and get a $75,000 raise, that's a lot of money. That's a Grand Wagoneer almost.
It's pretty well. It probably is after it's been discounted. Yes, yeah.
But there's no way you can't get 20% off a Grand Wagoneer right now. I would think.
Well, the only way you can't get 20% off a Grand Wagoneer is to walk into the dealership and say, "Oh my God, I've been waiting for this vehicle my entire life." Which is it? Okay.
I remember there was a tweet that a car dealership guy had, and he said, "Oh no, my wife said that she wanted a Grand Wagoneer," and I told him, I said, "I think she mispronounced Grand Caravan."
Yeah.
But okay, so we're talking about this inflation or whatever. We had another big thing that we won't talk too much about, but it hits home a little bit. For me, is that we've had a lot of these floods in North Carolina, and a lot of cities, I mean, towns were just wiped off the face of the planet, and it's horrible what has happened. The problem is that we're going to have a big need for cars on the western part of of my state, and I know Florida, Georgia was hit the same too. So this could add in some buying pressure to the market, causing a little bit more inflation, at least on a localized level. We really haven't, at least I haven't experienced any kind of catastrophe or even any significant flooding where a whole region would just absolutely need cars and need cars quickly. So I've never seen what that does to the local car market. But I would anticipate that even I'm going to feel it where we are with the used cars, that they're going to be dealers from the mountains come down here and try to buy as many used cars as they can to take them up there. I have a buddy who used to be a dealer in West Virginia. He literally texted me this morning and said, "Man, you need to figure out a way to get all your cars and get them transported to the mountains of North Carolina, because you just sell everything instantly."
Can you? And the reason it's like, can you really? If there's no roads and there's no homes because they've all been pretty much wiped out, who's buying it? I mean, how are you buying it? Where are you going with it once you've bought it? I mean, there's what, one road to get to Asheville at the moment? Okay, so it's will there be pressure and will cars be needed? Yes. Um, how long is it going to take insurance companies to get up to these areas to be able to settle claims? And you know, the pictures that we're seeing. I mean, you know, you said it, towns kind of like wiped off the face of the earth in areas where you would have never expected it to happen. Uh, you know, how it's like, how many years is it going to take in order to be able to rebuild some of these areas? I understand people live there, or could be lived there. You know, FEMA will set up housing and things like that. Might not be in those, you know, wherever it is. So, yeah, they're going to need cars, but I don't know that they're going to need them yesterday. I think it could be 30 days before literally they need them.
So I'll 100% agree with you with the hardest hit areas, but in Charlotte, on the I think it's the west side of Charlotte, which is just, I mean, it's 25 minutes from us. There were sections of Charlotte that were underwater. Now they were only underwater for a day. Those people are going to be looking for cars tomorrow. So it's not just the hardest hit areas. I'm talking about the whole area where there's going to be cars that have been lost, that there's going to be an uptick in demand from these consumers. And I think it's probably going to hit the used sector of the market more, because you're going to have dealers that have just lost cars that have to fill up their inventory again if they want to stay in business. They're going to get insurance checks. So this is not something, it's going to create, I think, a spike at auctions over the next few weeks. But the long-term effects of it, as more of these dealers have to load up more cars, and we're not getting trade-ins. We've talked about this a whole lot. We're not getting trade-ins from these new car dealers. I think this might actually, you know, I haven't thought about it all that much as far as what it's going to do, but me saying it out loud right now, it might actually be a big problem for us at my car dealership, because we're only 2 hours away from the center of the biggest problems in North Carolina. But even going 30 minutes to our west in Charlotte, there were lots of cars lost, and even farther than that, it's going to be worse.
I am thinking, based on what I've seen between, you know, the severe damages that we saw in Florida and in Georgia and in North Carolina, South Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, West Virginia, parts of Virginia. I think ultimately, when it comes to lost automobiles, this storm could be one of the worst storms historically for the number of vehicles that it takes out of people's hands. I think there could be more vehicle losses associated with this storm than with just about any other. I mean, I have lived through hurricanes, you know, where hurricanes start in the south and they work their way up through the Mid-Atlantic Valley or the Ohio Valley, but never to the degree that what we saw with this particular storm. And the number of cars impacted is going to be unbelievable. Now, how do you replace all those cars? I don't know. And new car dealers that lost new car inventory and used car inventory. You know, can the manufacturers help? This could save Stellantis. It would allow them not to have to cut those 200,000 cars out of production, because there could be Stellantis dealers in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, whose inventories were completely wiped out, that will be begging to have some type of inventory available. But, you know, where are all these cars going to come from, and how quickly can we get them there? That's the, I don't know the logistics. I mean, it's not like you can just poop used cars. Okay. It doesn't happen. And, you know, if there's 500,000 cars that were impacted in this event, that are going to end up being declared total losses because they were, I don't know, submerged in floodwaters. Well, you can't just come up with another 500,000 used cars like that. You know as well as there's already somewhat of a shortage of used cars. This is just going to exacerbate it, and yes, at auctions, it's going to make their values, what's there, worth more than what they should be. But here's a question for you: how soon before all these flood-totaled vehicles make their way back to the used car market? And how do you protect yourself from that?
It'll be next week. Next week we'll start. I'll have a conversation with Alex over the next couple of days. We'll be like, okay, there's a few things that we have to look for. You can just smell the inside of the car. You smell for must, mold, things like that. You look at carpets. You look in trunks. See if you can find any pooling water. And one of the easiest ways, and one of the things that a lot of dealers don't check, is you can actually shake the doors. Because water gets trapped in the doors, and you can hear that water. But that and another easy way is, especially if it's a warmer day here in North Carolina, we're still getting like 80-degree days. If you see any condensation built up on the windshield from an closed up car. Yep, those are the things that we'll be looking for, and it's going to happen in the next couple weeks. That there'll be some cars come straight to here to be unloaded because they don't have the brands yet on the Carfax, on the titles. So dealers will be trying to push them through auction just to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So that's what we get to look forward to over the next couple weeks.
And then as time goes by with those cars, the electrical and wiring issues that they're going to develop because they had been in floodwaters will just be, the poor consumer that ends up with that vehicle they're in for a lifetime of disappointment from those type of vehicles.
Yep, and they won't just be moving to me. I mean, these will be the quickest ones because we're only an hour and a half, 2 hours away from the damage that has ensued. Now, like I said, in Charlotte, we had segments of Charlotte that were underwater too. So those cars are going to come to us too. But you'll start seeing cars that go way far away from the initial damage. So what I have heard in the industry that there'll be some wholesalers, what they'll do, like if there's a big flood in Florida, they'll get a bunch of those cars and they'll take them somewhere where there's not even any dealers suspecting. They'll take them up to Michigan and then sell a lot of those cars. And they just get spread out across the country, and dealers have to be aware after a big natural disaster like this that these cars, they're going, if there's a dollar to be made off of someone else's misery, these dealers are going to figure out how to do it.
Unfortunately, there are people out there who will figure out how to do it. It's just, for used car dealers such as you and some of your competitors to unknowingly end up with some of these vehicles. I mean, it can impact you. It can impact, obviously, the ultimate retail customer. It's just, once the wholesaler has sold at the auction, and might be 6 weeks from now that the dealer who bought it and then sold it to a retail customer finds out what they really bought, and they no longer have any leverage or recourse. It's just it can be a terrible situation. And like I said, I if it's 500,000 cars, I don't know how we take care of this and come up with an extra 500,000 cars that people are going to need.
Yeah, and we got tax time around the corner. Dealers are going to start loading up for that. We've got already a depressed amount of quality used cars.
Yes,
car prices at auctions, at least around my area, they're about to pop, I think.
I think, unfortunately, you're right, because the shortage is just going to be exacerbated. And as we said in the beginning of the show, if when there's a shortage of a product, but there's no shortage of demand for that product, there's only one way that the prices go, and that's up, because the people that are in the market are at the dealer's mercy because they need to get a car, so they just have to pay the price.